You know what's weird? I grew up going to church, Sunday school, youth group, Bible studies, and not once, not a single time, did anyone mention that Jesus had brothers and sisters. 4 brothers, named in the text: James, Joseph, Simon, Judas, and sisters, plural. At least 2, maybe more. It's right there. Matthew 13, Mark 6, plain as day. Is not this the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary? And are not his brothers James and Joseph and Simon and Judas? And are not all his sisters with us? That's not from some lost gospel. That's Matthew, chapter 13, verse 55. So why did I never hear about them? But the evidence gets wilder. One of these brothers, James, the one who thought Jesus was out of his mind, became the most powerful leader in the early church. More powerful than Peter. More influential than Paul in Jerusalem. The Eastern Church still calls him adelphoi, the brother of God. Another brother wrote a book of the New Testament. There, grandchildren were dragged before a Roman emperor and interrogated as potential threats to Rome. And for the first 3 centuries of Christianity, being related to Jesus by blood was the ultimate credential. They had a name for these relatives: the Desposyni, Greek for belonging to the master. So why don't we talk about them? That's what we're investigating. Brothers who thought Jesus was crazy. Grandchildren interrogated by emperors. A family dynasty that led the church for a century. If you want to know the truth they never taught you in Sunday school, immediately subscribe. This is just the beginning. The evidence trail starts with names. In Hebrew, those names would be Yaakov, Yosef, Shimon, and Yehuda, the most common Jewish names of the 1st century. We find them carved on ossuaries, bone boxes, all over Jerusalem from this period. This was a big family, a normal Jewish family. Yeshua, that's Jesus' actual name, grew up in a crowded household with, at least 6 siblings. But here's what most people miss. His brothers didn't believe in him. John's Gospel is blunt about it. Chapter 7, verse 5, for even his brothers did not believe in him. Mark's Gospel goes further. Chapter 3, Jesus' family shows up to seize him. That's the Greek word krateo, meaning to take hold of by force, because people are saying he is out of his mind. Let that sink in. Jesus' own brothers thought he'd lost his mind. They came to take him home, to restrain him. They didn't believe he was the Messiah. And then everything flipped. Before we get to what changed them, I need to address the obvious question. For almost 2,000 years, Christians have been arguing about what brothers and sisters actually means here. There are 3 main positions, and they all exist for the same reason. Position 1, the Helvidian view, named after Helvidius, 380s AD. This says the brothers and sisters were children of Mary and Joseph, born after Jesus. This is what most Protestants believe today. Position 2, the Epiphanian view, named after Bishop Epiphanius. This says the siblings were Joseph's kids from a previous marriage. Step-siblings, this is what the Eastern Orthodox Church teaches. Position 3, the Hieronymian view, named after Jerome. This says brothers means cousins. This is the official Roman Catholic position. Here's what you need to understand. All 3 positions are trying to protect the same thing, the doctrine of Mary's perpetual virginity. If Jesus had biological siblings born to Mary, that doctrine has a problem. 3 different traditions. 1 uncomfortable question. If you're already seeing the Bible differently, you're going to want to stick around. Hit subscribe. We go this deep every single week. So what does the evidence actually show? The Greek settles it. The word used for brothers is adelphoi. It comes from a meaning same, and Delphi's meaning womb. Literally, from the same womb. Greek has a perfectly good word for cousin. It's anepsios. The New Testament uses it exactly once, Colossians 4:10. So if the gospel writers meant cousins, why didn't they say anepsios? Every time Jesus' brothers are mentioned, they're mentioned alongside Mary. If these were cousins, why are they always grouped with Mary? The natural reading is that they were her children. Paul actually met James face to face in Jerusalem around 36 AD. He writes about it in Galatians 1:19. I saw none of the other apostles, only James, the Lord's brother. The Greek is ton adelphon to Kyrio, the brother of the Lord. If James were a cousin, Paul would have said anepsios.
Brother of the Lord?
He didn't. Josephus confirms this around 93 AD. The brother of Jesus, who was called Christ, whose name was James. Brother, not cousin. Adelphos, a Jewish historian writing for a Roman audience with no reason to favor Christian claims. But whatever you believe about the exact relationship, here's where the case breaks open. James, the skeptic who tried to drag Jesus home, became the leader of the entire Christian movement, more powerful than Peter. According to one ancient source, he was the only person allowed to enter the Holy of Holies in the temple. And I can prove every word of it. Remember where we left off. Jesus' brothers didn't believe. John 7:5 is clear. They thought he was crazy. Then Jesus was crucified around Passover, 30 or 33 AD. What happened next doesn't make sense unless something changed everything. In 1 Corinthians 15, Paul lists everyone who saw Jesus after the resurrection. This is the earliest written account we have, around 54 AD Peter, the 12, 500 people at once, and then, verse 7, then he appeared to James. The risen Jesus made a personal appearance to his brother James, not to the crowds, not to the 12, to James specifically, the brother who didn't believe. Jesus showed up for him. We don't know what they said. The Gospel of the Hebrews, an early Jewish Christian text, now mostly lost, apparently described James taking a vow not to eat until he saw Jesus risen. Jerome quotes, "My brother, eat your bread, for the Son of Man is risen from the dead." Acts 1:14 records what happened next. Right after Jesus ascends to heaven, the disciples are gathered with the women and Mary, the mother of Jesus, and with his brothers. The brothers are there now. The skeptics are in the room. The transformation was complete. And James, Yaakov, didn't just become a believer. He became the leader. By Acts 12, James is running the show in Jerusalem. Peter gets released from prison, and his first words are, "Tell these things to James and to the brothers." Not, "Tell the apostles." Tell James. James was in charge. The brother who thought Jesus was crazy, now running the entire movement. More powerful than Peter. If this is changing how you see the early church, subscribe now. The biggest revelations are still coming. Acts 15, the Council of Jerusalem. The question, do Gentile converts have to follow Jewish law? Peter speaks. Paul and Barnabas speak. But it's James who delivers the verdict. Therefore, my judgment is, the Greek word krino means to decide, to rule, his judgment, his call. Paul calls James one of the pillars, styloi in Greek, James, Peter, and John. And in Galatians 2:9, James is listed first. Even the Gospel of Thomas records the disciples asking, "We know you will leave us. Who will be our leader?" Jesus answers, "Wherever you are to go to James the just, for whose sake heaven and earth came into being. The early church called him Yaakov HaTzaddik, James the Just. According to Hegesippus, writing around 170 AD, James was a Nazir, a Nazirite. He took the ancient vow from Numbers 6. Hegesippus describes him. He drank no wine or strong drink, nor did he eat meat. No razor came upon his head. He did not anoint himself with oil. He alone was permitted to enter the Holy of Holies, since he did not wear wool but linen. And he was often found on his knees praying for the people, so that his knees became hard like a camel's. Some details may be legendary, but the portrait is consistent. James was respected not just by Christians, but by Jews throughout Jerusalem. Think about that arc. From "he's out of his mind" to "my judgment is." What turned a skeptic into the most powerful man in the movement? James's story ends in 62 AD. It ends with stones, and a Jewish historian, Josephus, who had no reason to care about Christian martyrs, recorded every detail. What happened to James caused a political crisis in Jerusalem. The year is 62 AD. The Roman governor Festus has just died. His replacement, Albinus, is still traveling from Rome. There's a power vacuum. The high priest is Ananus ben Ananus, a Sadducee from one of the most powerful priestly families. Harsh, ambitious, and he sees an opportunity. Josephus writes in Antiquities of the Jews, Book 20. Ananus assembled the Sanhedrin of judges and brought before them the brother of Jesus, who was called Christ, whose name was James, and some others. When he had formed an accusation against them as breakers of the law, he delivered them to be stoned. James, the brother of Jesus, was executed by stoning in 62 AD. This isn't Christian tradition. This is a Jewish historian writing for a Roman audience around 93 AD. Josephus calls him the brother of Jesus, who was called Christ. This is one of the earliest non-Christian references to Jesus in all of ancient literature. The execution caused outrage. Josephus records that the most fair-minded citizens were offended. They sent messengers complaining that Ananus acted illegally. The result? Ananus was deposed as high priest after only 3 months. James was so respected that killing him caused a political crisis. After James died, the Jerusalem church needed a new leader. According to Hegesippus, they unanimously elected Simeon, the son of Clopas. Clopas was Joseph's brother, Jesus' uncle. That makes Simeon Jesus' first cousin. The church chose another family member. Simeon, Shimon bar Clopas in Aramaic, led the Jerusalem Christians through the Jewish War. When the Roman army surrounded Jerusalem in 66 AD, Simeon led the Christians out of the city to Pella, across the Jordan River. They escaped the destruction. Simeon continued as episkopos, overseer, for decades. According to Hegesippus, he was martyred around 107 AD, reportedly 120 years old. Crucified, a cousin of Jesus, leading the church, crucified for his faith. Jude's story goes even further. Yehuda in Hebrew is traditionally the author of the Epistle of Jude, just 25 verses. The opening: Jude, a servant of Jesus Christ and brother of James. Notice, he doesn't call himself brother of Jesus. He calls himself a servant, doulos, slave of Jesus. But it doesn't stop there. According to Hegesippus, preserved in Eusebius, Jude had grandsons, and those grandsons were hauled before Emperor Domitian around 90 AD, the grandsons of Jesus' brother, the great-nephews of Jesus himself, standing before a Roman emperor. Domitian had heard that descendants of King David were still alive, and he was paranoid. These men could theoretically claim the Jewish throne. the great nephews of Jesus, standing before a Roman emperor, showing their calloused farmers' hands as proof they weren't a threat. This is documented history. If this is blowing your mind, hit subscribe. Because what happened to this family after Rome took over the church is even more shocking. Here's what Hegesippus recorded. He asked them if they were descendants of David, and they confessed they were. Then he asked how much property they had. They said they had between them only 9,000 denarii, and they showed their hands, exhibiting the roughness of their skin and the calluses from constant work, as evidence that they were laborers. 9,000 denarii, maybe 15 years' wages, not wealth. These were farmers, the great nephews of Jesus, working the soil with their bare hands, showing their calluses to a Roman emperor. Domitian asked about Christ's kingdom. They answered, "Not of this world. It belongs to the sphere of heaven and angels." The emperor treated them with contempt as too mean for notice and let them go free. And here's what Hegesippus recorded next. They became leaders of the churches, both because of their testimony and because of their kinship to the Lord. These relatives had a name, the Desposyni, Greek for belonging to the Lord. According to Eusebius, every bishop of Jerusalem from James to the Bar Kokhba revolt in 135 AD was from Jesus' extended family. The last was Judah Kyriakos, Judah belonging to the Lord, reportedly a descendant of Jude. The sisters are never named in our sources, but the grandsons, they were dragged before Emperor Domitian, showed him their calloused hands, and told him about a kingdom not of this world. And here's what's been hiding in plain sight. They kept leading the church until Rome told them to stop. The sisters. The New Testament says Jesus had them, adelphoi, the feminine plural. Sisters, at least two, but their names never recorded. Later traditions mention Salome and Mary, or Salome and Anna. Different manuscripts, different names, we can't be certain. But Jesus grew up with sisters, and when he treated women with unusual respect, talking with the Samaritan woman, letting Mary of Bethany sit at his feet, commissioning women as the first witnesses to the resurrection. Maybe his sisters shaped some of that.
Believe.
Here's why this changes everything. The siblings ground Jesus in history. These aren't mythological figures. James is mentioned by Paul around 36 AD and Josephus around 93 AD. Jude's grandsons were interrogated by Domitian around 90 AD. Simeon Bar, Clopas, was martyred around 107 AD. These are documented facts from multiple independent sources. Documented facts. Multiple sources. A family that proves Jesus was real. If this is giving you a deeper understanding of the Bible, you need to be subscribed. We build cases like this every week with faith and intellectual honesty. When skeptics argue Jesus was a mythological figure like Osiris or Mithras, the existence of his documented family members creates a serious problem. Mythology doesn't include brothers who think you're crazy, then lead your movement, then get martyred in historically verifiable events. Second, the transformation of the brothers is powerful evidence for something happening after the crucifixion. James didn't believe. John 7:5, Mark 3:21. Then after the crucifixion, James became the leader. He was willing to die for his belief, and he did. What turned a skeptic into a martyr? Paul gives us the answer. He appeared to James. Critics say the disciples hallucinated, but James wasn't a disciple. He was a skeptic. He had no investment in the movement succeeding, and yet he gave his life. Third, the brothers revealed Jesus' humanity. He grew up in a family, with siblings who annoyed him and loved him, with dinner table arguments. He knew what it was like to be misunderstood by the people closest to him. Hebrews says Jesus was in all points tempted as we are. Part of that must have included family conflict, being thought crazy by your own relatives. If you've ever felt misunderstood by your family, if the people who should support you the most just don't get it, Jesus understands. He lived it. So why don't we hear about any of this? Why did the brothers and sisters of Jesus get erased from the story? There's a reason, and the trail leads to a meeting in Rome around 318 AD, when the last of the Desposyni showed up to demand their churches back. They met with Pope Sylvester, with the backing of Emperor Constantine, and they were told no. Part of it is theological, as the doctrine of Mary's perpetual virginity developed, starting in the 2nd century, becoming dogma by the 4th. The brothers and sisters became inconvenient. They had to be explained away. Cousins, step-siblings, anything but what the text says. And part of it is historical. After Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 AD, the Jewish Christian community scattered. After the Bar Kokhba revolt in 135 AD, Emperor Hadrian banned all Jews from Jerusalem, renamed it Aelia Capitolina. The Desposyni lost their base of power. Christianity's center shifted to Rome, Antioch, Alexandria. The Greek-speaking Gentile church eclipsed the Hebrew-speaking Jewish church. Bishop authority came from apostolic succession, law, not blood relation to Jesus. According to one account, representatives of the Desposyni traveled to Rome around 318 AD to meet Pope Sylvester I. They demanded he revoke the authority of Greek bishops in Jerusalem and Antioch and appoint Desposyni bishops instead. Blood relatives of Jesus, leading the churches their family had founded. Sylvester refused. He told them the mother church was now in Rome, with the bones of Peter. The Jewish Christian relatives of Jesus had no place in the new imperial church backed by Constantine. The Desposyni faded from history. Some joined the Nazarenes or Ebionites, Jewish Christian groups that eventually died out or were declared heretical. Their writings were lost. Their memory faded. But the evidence is still there. In Matthew, in Mark, in Paul's letters, in Acts, in Josephus, in Hegesippus, in Eusebius. The brothers and sisters of Jesus are part of the historical record. They deserve to be remembered. Here's what I want you to walk away with. Jesus had a family, a real family. Brothers who doubted him and later died for him. Sisters who grew up with him in Nazareth. Nephews and great-nephews who were interrogated by emperors and led churches with calloused farmers' hands. Cousins who were crucified for their faith a century after the resurrection. Yeshua wasn't a figure who appeared out of nowhere. He was part of a household, part of a lineage, part of a story that stretches from a crowded house in Nazareth to the court of Domitian to a meeting with a pope backed by Constantine. And that makes his story not less miraculous, but more, because it means the divine entered the ordinary. God became a man whose brothers thought he was crazy, and those brothers eventually bowed their knees and called him Lord. If this video changed how you see Jesus and his family, you need to be subscribed, because next week, we're asking who actually wrote the Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. We've heard those names our whole lives. But did those men actually write those books? The evidence might surprise you. Subscribe now so you don't miss it. And tell me in the comments, did you know Jesus had brothers and sisters? What view do you hold, Helvidian, Epiphanian, or Hieronymian? Until next time, Keep digging. Keep questioning. Keep seeking truth.